What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's up, Fantasy Points? We are back for week 6 of the cage match. If you're not familiar with the cage match, it's the same thing every week. Jake and I are here every week, and then we have another guest on with us each week. We are going to draft DraftKings teams against each other. So we can't take any of the same players. It'll just be a standard snake draft, drafting 3 different teams in a 3-man contest, only playing against each other, running on Sunday. And we're playing for charity. So each of us picks a charity each week. And at the end of the week, once we know the winner, Fantasy Points will donate $100 to the winner's charity of choice. Last week for me, actually, before we get into the charities, let me introduce our guest, Ryan Heath. Fantasy Points, I call him Scott Barrett's golden boy, known as one of the best young writers in the industry, just a fantastic fantasy football analyst coming on the show. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Neil. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. Was really looking forward to get to losing against you two is what I expect to happen. So
you were about to say winning though, so
right,
maybe
that
down,
that
you feel
one
like
was
you
not
can.
coming. Yeah, no, I don't think so. It was not. It was losing the whole time.
One other fun fact about Ryan is, as of this past week, full-time at Fantasy Points, just hired on full-time at Fantasy Points. So congrats to you, Ryan. How is the full-time gig? Are they working you even harder now that you're full-time?
It's been amazing, right? I just get to sit down at my desk and do what I want to do pretty much all day. So yeah, it's been pretty awesome. A lot to keep up with, but I'm enjoying it.
Nice. Jake, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great, man. Still coming into the cage with my head held high despite the 0-5 record. I know that my fantastically projecting teams will eventually pull through for me at some point one of these weeks.
I was holding off on the gloating until the portion of the show where we review the teams, because I feel like it's awkward. Like, I come in here just hot, talking trash immediately, and then it's like, oh, and by the way, here's our charities. Here's the nice charities. These guys suck, but our charities, they're great. You should donate to them. So I decided to hold off on the trash talking until we get to that segment of the show. Jake, are you in North Carolina?
No, I was in North Carolina all last week. Was staying at my mom's house because of the impact that the hurricane had on Augusta. Thankfully, we are back. I believe we're part of the 45% or so of Augustans that have internet. Our water returned to being clean water just a couple of days before we got back. We have power and everything. So there's a chance I would have had to do this show from my girlfriend's microscope room at Augusta University. Thankfully, we avoided that, and I'm just in my office.
That would have been interesting at the very least. I mean, I kind of wish that you had been forced to do that, because it would have been cool to see the microscope room.
Yeah, well, she doesn't exist too, so that really would have put me in a bind.
I know, that's like, how would you even get in? You'd have to break into the university. I mean, it would have been really
tough. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so glad to have internet.
So this the what you see on the screen here is the Salvation Army. This was my charity of choice last week. Salvation Army's specifically hurricane relief for Western North Carolina. This was my charity last week, and Ryan decided to go back to this one. I think it's just a good enough cause right now. We all, everybody kind of working together to get things right in North Carolina. Ryan, why were you into the Salvation Army hurricane relief for your charity this week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously very topical right now. And we have several people at Fantasy Points, Jake being one of them, but many others that were also affected by the hurricane. So yeah, it's a little bit personal for me. So yeah, just think it's a great cause and something I want to help out with.
Yeah, definitely affecting people that we all love. And I guess I'll skip to mine. Also, I'm donating to, since I did Salvation Army last week, I saw some people donating to the Mana Food Bank this week, also helping with the hurricane efforts in Western North Carolina. So another great charity that people can donate to. And as you can see on the screen, all of the links for the charities we've chosen are in the description. So if you also want to donate to these charities, you are welcome to do so. And then Jake, you're going back to Friends of North Augusta Animals. You want to tell us a little bit about Friends of North Augusta?
Yeah, it's a great charity. Does a ton of work for local animals here in North Augusta. A lot of great programs. My only worry is that I I wonder if they're going to need my cat for collateral if I keep losing these cage match games. That's pretty tough, but obviously a really great local organization, one that I'm excited to support with a week 6 win.
If we get to like week 17 and you still haven't won, then maybe I'll choose Friends of North Augusta too. Just, I'll have been through so many charities at that point just to get them a win. Maybe I'll join you in the cause. Seems like a great charity.
If I go 0-17, I will donate $500 to Friends of North Augusta Animals. I can promise the show that right now.
And I think it seems pretty likely looking at your performance so far, Jake. 5 on the season. Last week, again, last place, just 120.46 fans. But I told you I was reserving, the trash talking, the gloating, and now we're to that portion of the show. We can review our teams from last week. Jake, of course, coming in last place. Can't feel that great. Jake, how do you feel about your process? How do you feel about the team you put together last week?
Yeah, I mean, looking back at this team, I actually feel pretty great about it. I got 2 of the best running back plays of the week in Kenneth Walker and Derrick Henry. Those were 2 of the guys I was, the most excited about on the slate. Jerome Ford, I think, was, a bit maybe iffier in terms of overall process. We have seen a bit more volatility with that backfield. And I mean, just Deshaun Watson looks awful. Like this offense has a lot of problems, and you always want to be a little bit more hesitant with rostering running backs and, an offense that could just be pitiful. But against Washington, I certainly think it makes sense. Darius Slayton was a guy that I picked just to, save salary, just because he fit. He happened to be my highest scoring player, had an absolutely monster game. Daniel Jones has been playing pretty well for about a month straight. Even without Malik Neighbors, still looked pretty good. Giants had a great game there. Debo Samuel and Deontay Johnson, obviously both projected really well. I think Debo at 6,800 was just way too cheap last week. Same thing with Deontay at 61. Snowflakes, unfortunately. Colby Parkinson wasn't a guy I was super excited about, but he was one of the highest projected tight ends of the slate. I shocked the world with my Broncos defense pick last week. I think I did that in, round 5, round 6, which was probably the earliest we've had a defense selected. I was probably 100% right. They scored 16 points. They looked awesome. Las Vegas really couldn't do much. I feel pretty good about the build. I'd certainly be happy with another comparable build this week. I just hope the results end up a little bit better.
Kenneth Walker saw like 8 targets last week. He, historically not really somebody that involved in the passing game, but he they barely used him in the rushing game, and then he gets there in the passing game. I'm curious to see if that's something that they're going to do going forward. Did you guys notice anything? Like, do you think that was just a fluky thing, or do you think they're intentionally going to Kenneth Walker through the air? Because it was 5 targets the week prior too, so it's 13 targets the past 2 weeks for Kenneth Walker. Do we think this is a sustainable change?
I had a note for Ryan that over the last 3 weeks, Kenneth Walker's per snap usage when trailing, measured by expected fantasy points, is the second best among all running backs. I believe it was only behind Devon Achane, which is pretty crazy. Ryan, I'm curious if you have anything to add there, because it does really seem like they want to use Ken Walker a lot more than we're used to in the passing game.
Yeah, no, I mean, we heard this even before the season. Both Mike McDonald and Ryan Grubb were coming out in the media in July, in August, saying, yeah, we think Ken Walker can be a 3-down player, and we want the ball in his hands all the time. And yeah, that's kind of what we've seen. So yeah, a little bit surprising going into the season, but I do think it's real because it confirms what the coaches have been telling us.
Yeah, seems bullish for Kenneth Walker. Not as bullish that he only had like 2 carries or 4 carries for the game. Not used that much there, but good to see him involved in the passing game. Man, Debo Samuel was one of the first players into my cash lineup, so that was pretty brutal to see him. He actually came in pretty low owned in cash, which kind of took me by surprise, and then just really disappointed. So I thought he was going to be a way to separate from the fish in cash. Did not work out. Colby Parkinson did well enough, but couldn't compete with Tucker Kraft. Overall, yeah, some disappointing performances here. Ryan, you are up to take a look at Justin Steele's lineup. We always have the guest review the previous guest lineup from last week, and as Jake said, this was the lineup that was the highest projected coming into the week. How do you feel about the lineup?
If you'd asked me before Sunday morning, I'd have been like, man, yeah, this is exactly like all the lineups I want to be entering this weekend. Obviously, a few plays here did not quite work out how we expected. Probably most famously, Dontavian Wicks just shattering the fantasy football landscape over this past weekend, where everybody has told me they're upset that I was into Dontavian Wicks. I guess I didn't consider that he drops passes. So that one was a little surprising. Obviously, think the process there was totally fine. leading the team in air yard share and target share. He got the usage we expected. Just wasn't connecting with Love exactly how we would have wanted. Jordan Mason, I mean, that was another play I was super into. Obviously, kind of the game script didn't work out exactly how we expected. But yeah, that was way too good of a matchup to ignore, in my opinion, last week. I mean, really the only success here is Tucker Kraft. As Proctor was saying, the best tight end play of the year. And that turned out to work at least. But yeah, there's kind of not a whole lot else to say here with this lineup. Yeah, it's pretty pitiful.
Yeah, I said on some shows last week that like I really liked all of the Green Bay players in general in DFS, and it seemed almost impossible that nobody would hit. And really, Tucker Kraft, I think, was the only one who hit in a way that you actually wanted him, like point per dollar. Jaden Reed was fine. I think he did okay, but like didn't quite get there for his salary. Wicks a big disappointment. Bo Melton, the big disappointment. I guess Josh Jacobs was, I think, also maybe okay point per dollar. I don't know, but it was kind of rough for the Packers in general. Outside of Tucker Kraft, obviously worked out really well for Kraft. But man, yeah, Wicks pretty disappointed now. It sounds like maybe like Romeo Doubs probably back from suspension. I'm still curious to see how that plays out. Like he was just like, I'm upset about my playing time, so I'm going to skip practice. Like, do they just let him back in immediately as a starting receiver? Christian Watson might be back. Is Wicks time over? How are we feeling about Wicks for this weekend?
I think you can go back to it, honestly. But part of the reason for that is that I just think that Wicks is better than a guy like Romeo Doubs, right? We've seen that kind of in all the per route metrics, the per route utilization through Wicks' entire career. Yeah, just very interesting move from Romeo Doubs, where he gets really upset that the Packers have let him run more routes over the last 2 years than like 3 other receivers on the team that have been more efficient than him. So, I don't know how that one's gonna end up this week.
Yeah, I was not anticipating that from Romeo Doubs. I largely faded him throughout the summer in best ball because he was not that good. But it was like the scary part was always like, well, he gets so much usage anyway, and he still had elite usage this year. And then he complains about it and gets benched. And I love it. I hope that he continues to sit out practices and get suspended, because that would benefit the Packers receivers that I want to be playing instead of Romeo Doubs. All right.
He did practice in full today, for what it's worth.
Okay. All right. That is a good note. So he's back at practice. Probably not going to get suspended again this week. That's a bummer. Oh, well. Finally, the winning team by a good margin. I don't know if you guys noticed the point differentials here. It's nearly 50 points between nearly 60 points between over 60 points between first and third. My math is all wrong here. More than a 60-point difference between first and third place here. That is just brutal. Nearly 60 points between first and second. Just pure domination for me this week. 3 weeks in a row with the winning lineup. Did pretty, the Burrow to Chase stack did pretty well there for over 80 points out of those two. Jordan Whittington, 16 fantasy points. Trey Sermon, I mean, honestly, looked like a worse pick going into Sunday than it felt when I made it on Wednesday, but got 18 fantasy points anyway. Just overall, this team just crushed. Outside of Yoshivas, kind of a disappointment, but only 4,100. Was 2 yards away from this actually being a touchdown where he would look pretty good. Jaden Reed, yeah, I guess a little bit of a disappointment here. Also went down at the goal line, so both Yoshi and Reed could have been a little bit better. Bowers crushed, which was good to see. Just in general, he was so disappointing the prior week. And I think maybe the week prior to that too, when he played the Panthers, was kind of looking like, man, Bowers is so good, but not able to put up fantasy points on this team. Last week, we finally saw him. He had a long touchdown early, really, really nice game for Bowers. How do we think about AOC coming in as the quarterback for the Raiders? How is that going to affect Brock Bowers?
I can't imagine it's going to make a significant difference relative to Minshew. I think they're pretty comparable players. I can pull up their positional target tendencies, but Ryan, do you have a take there?
Yeah, no, I had a note that Bowers' target share with AOC this past week was tied for the highest on the team with Jacoby Myers. So yeah, AOC was going to him just as much. I don't have like a super strong like talent differential take between Minshew or AOC. So yeah, I think it's going to be pretty similar to what we've seen so far.
Which would be pretty good for Bowers. I mean, he's just been awesome so far this year.
Minshew does have a 5% higher career tight end target rate, but those are largely scheme driven and also talent driven as well. So important to keep that in mind. That's not a big enough gap where I would say there's going to be a super tangible difference there.
All right, so we're expecting about the same. Before we get into our draft coming up, I do see Bink King is in the chat, says he wants to be in the cage. Bink King actually really had a great call last week was very into Tank Bigsby. He brought up Tank Bigsby on the show as somebody that he was interested. I was not super into it. He was a little bit too expensive for my taste. I don't think I ended up playing Tank Bigsby, but that was a pretty great call. Over 100 yards last week for Tank Bigsby, had a big game. What do we think about the split between Bigsby and ETN going forward? Are we concerned about ETN's role? Do we think Bigsby is just is it going to be a 50-50 backfield? How do you guys see this playing out with the Jags backfield?
We were debating this in our projections chat, the company, projections chat, where we go in on each other about, all the nuances to bump guys by half a point or, a tenth of a point or whatever. Etienne hurt his shoulder and then he had a 17% snap share in the second half. So I think that certainly played, a relatively big hand there. I think the team wants to keep Etienne involved, but I mean, at this point, it's very obvious. Tank Bigsby is the better runner. He looks so awesome on film. It feels kind of like a matter of time before he just completely takes over the backfield, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they were a little bit more stubborn with Etienne here. So I don't know. I guess for this week, I'm not, super excited for rest of season though. I like Bigsby as like a stash on, redraft benches or whatever. Ryan, I'm curious if you have anything else to add there.
Yeah, I mean, with them, they've just kept the roles very separate, right? So ETN is the only one who's gotten real pass game work at all. I think Bigsby has one target over the last 3 weeks or something, and it was the screen that he caught in week 5. So, and I mean, looked fine on it, right? But yeah, I would think it's going to be sort of a negative game script, more ETN, positive game script, lean more toward Bigsby. He seems to be in at the goal line a bit more as well. So yeah, kind of, I think going to be difficult to get excited about either of them from week to week though.
Doug Peterson said that, Travis is our guy. Tank had a good game. That's just the way games go. His coach speak, per the coach speak index, which is like the best follow on Twitter, on production or depth chart coach speak, only a 35% reliability rating. So, you don't really want to put a lot of stock into that. But probably at least worth noting.
Definitely worth noting. Yeah, I'm signed up for the Coach Speak Index Discord, which I can't recommend enough. Just great way to he has it separated by team there, so it's easy to find if you're looking at a specific team. Really fantastic tool. And it's just like $5 a month, so would recommend that also. Before we get into the draft, I have one more news item that I want to touch on. Jameis Winston came into the game late last week for the Browns. I thought that was promising. Are they going to make the switch? Because Deshaun Watson has been so bad. They should make the switch. And then they came out after the game and said, no, Deshaun is still our quarterback. Do we think at some point, is their hand going to be forced? Because Deshaun Watson just can't throw right now. What do we think? How long, over under 2.5 games before Jameis Winston is going to start a game for the Browns?
I'm so split on this because I would imagine ownership is you can't bench Deshaun Watson. We have a $250 million tied up in this guy. He has to keep playing. And then I would imagine every coach and everyone in the locker room is like, what the hell are we doing? We need Jameis out there. Jameis is the guy who's hyping the team up pregame. How often do you see backup quarterbacks giving the pregame speech to the team? It's obvious Deshaun Watson is not the answer here to any of the Browns' problems. And, they have a good enough roster that they should be a pretty decent team with Jameis Winston under center, or even, any decent quarterback. It's a very frustrating situation, and it's a hard one to get a read on. I would assume the benching happens eventually. I think Jameis Winston is an elite, super flex stash. Yeah. But yeah, Ryan, I'm curious what you think here. Are we gonna suffer through Deshaun all season?
Yeah, I'd give it more than 2.5 games, but I think it's happening eventually. I don't know if you guys saw the clip where I think it was Stefanski wanted to go for it on 4th down, but Watson just walked off the field. This was like a totally wild clip that was floating around. So yeah, no, like Jake said, I can only assume that the only people who want him out there is ownership, and that their minds will change eventually if the fan base riots hard enough, basically. So, yeah. But yeah, it may take a little bit.
In projections, us and pretty much all the other major sites are pricing in like a 2 to 5% chance that he gets benched in any given game. So, you rarely see that unless the writing's pretty close to on the wall for some of these guys.
Are you also then giving Jameis Winston a projection? Like,
I mean, if he's getting
2%
of dropbacks, then yeah, he'll end up with like a 0.2 to 0.8 is generally what you're seeing across the industry on Jameis.
Okay. Interesting. All right, we're going to get into the draft. As the guest, Ryan, you get to choose your draft spot. So do you want, and it's a snake draft, do you want to draft first, second, or third?
I'm actually going to go third here. I'm going to take the 2 in the snake. Yeah.
So it's going to be me and then Jake and then Ryan. It's an even week, so that means that I go first. And admittedly, I was kind of hoping that I would be able to go second, because it is sort of a tough call for me this week. Hang on, I had a thought on somebody. I think I'm just going to go with Bijan, 6,600 against Carolina. I think the value is really strong for Bijan. Now maybe I'm under. I'm not worried enough about the injury. Like, Bijan was not really used last week late in the game. Projects so well point per dollar. So now I'm having doubts. I already made the pick, so I'm going to stick with it. But I already regret my first overall pick of Bijan Robinson based on his usage last week. Was really concerning, really indicative, I think, to me, of an injury. The fact that they had Tyler Algier coming in like when they needed to hurt, like 3 minutes left, needed to go the length of the field. They had Tyler Algier in as the receiving back. Now I've made the pick. I'm not going to change it. What do you guys think? Like, should I be more worried about Bijan? How concerned are you guys with Bijan's role?
I was looking at Bijan as like a top 5, top 6 pick in this format. Regardless, I was thinking that I was most likely going to end up in the 3 spot, the 3-4 turn. So I was probably going to take Bijan there. The matchup could not be better. Yeah. They're favored pretty heavily here. I think, Scott or Ryan, whichever one of you guys wrote it in the everything report mentioned, he's dealing with that shoulder injury, might also be a bit of a hamstring as well. He's still practicing in full. I think the real story is probably that Tyler Algier has earned a lot of this playing time by playing pretty well. It feels a bit to me like Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. But either way, against Carolina at 6,600, a running back of his talent level, even if he is only going to play 65% of snaps, I think, could still give you 25 or 30. Ryan, I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I would view it too. I mean, Panthers are at, I believe, a top 3 schedule adjusted against running backs matchup right now. So yeah, even if it is Algier getting what he's had the last few games, then I still think Bijan is a guy I want to play this week.
The only pushback that I'm going to give is on the Algier has earned a role bit, because last week, Bijan Robinson, 12 carries for 61 yards. That's 5.1 yards per carry. Tyler Algier last week, 6 carries for 12 yards, 2 yards per carry. He had 3 receptions for a total of 13 yards. The efficiency numbers were so bad last year for Algier. I think that overall this year, you're probably right. He has earned some role because he's been better than that over the course of the year. But I think like last week, there was nothing last week that made me think, yeah, of course they want to be playing Algier because he's crushing. Like, it definitely wasn't like a hot hand thing. It was more like why is Tyler Algier in there when Bijan he was great last week, over 5 yards per carry. So
Algier was at 6.2 yards per carry in the first month of the season, and this is the second coaching staff in a row that we've seen give Algier real touches.
Yeah.
At the expense of Bijan. So he's obviously showing, the coaches something that they like to see. But yeah, there certainly are some injury concerns there. And maybe those just go away this week. Maybe they had, taken their foot off the gas with Bijan. He was at an 85% snap share in weeks 1 through 3. Things could really crank up this week if they think he's a little bit more healthy. But yeah, it feels like a bit of an up in the air type scenario.
Yeah, no, I just I guess for that one game specifically, it was like, why do they keep going back to Algier? I guess I think you're right that he's earned a role for the season, but for the year, for that game, it was just like, man, Bijan has been so much better. Why not go to the guy who's been better, who's typically your starter? But I don't know. And of course, like normally would be the guy you'd expect to be in there for that role when you need to move the ball quickly down the field. Bijan clearly better than Algier. But anyway, I digress. Ryan said he's going third. So Jake, you are up with the middle pick here.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I think running back is relatively flat, so I'm mostly looking at quarterback and wide receiver, and there is a fairly notable drop off right now in our projections between QB1 and QB2 in terms of value. So I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson here. I mean, it's pretty obvious. This total against Washington is massive. I believe it's the second highest on the slate after Detroit and Dallas. The Washington pass defense isn't great. I would be a bit worried about this being a Derrick Henry game. I think that could certainly take away from things, but Washington can really push opponents. And even if their pass defense is slightly improved, the shootout environment here is just incredible. Lamar's playing at, an unreal level. He's just a fantastic play this week.
Yep. Hard to argue with Lamar with that huge projection, best projection on the entire slate across all positions. Ryan, you are up with back-to-back picks now. Who do you want to take?
All right. So I'm going to start at quarterback. I'm going to go with Jordan Love here. We're going back to the well with Jordan Love this week. So basically this Cardinals-Packers game, I think, is one of the better shootout environments that we've seen all year. Both teams rank like bottom 6 in pressure rate. Both quarterbacks obviously benefit from less pressure. So I just like kind of everything that's going on there. And then for my next pick, I'm going to go over to running back. I'm going to go down the projected point per dollar a little bit just because I feel pretty strongly about this spot. I'm just going to take Derrick Henry, another guy that we're going right back to this week. Just kind of everything about this play lines up for me. So the Ravens are big favorites. We know that Henry, I believe, is the RB1 or RB2 in games that he has won over the past 2 years, over 20 fantasy points per game. Is just kind of insane. The Commanders have been totally unable to stop the run this year. So I'm just kind of all over Derrick Henry this week.
Teams have gone more run heavy against Washington too. They're a top 8 run funnel this season by pass rate over expectation allowed. Last year, they were a top 8 pass funnel. So that was another thing that did worry me a bit about my Lamar Jackson pick. But, at the same time, it's Lamar Jackson. And I think if either of those plays is going to fail, Henry has a much wider path in a negative game script. If Washington gets up 14-0 and Baltimore has to play catch up, Derrick Henry's going to play 35% of the snaps. So that was my only worry with Henry, but I do like the pick. And, like Ryan said, everything just basically lines up for him.
Yeah, pretty interesting that Washington has been more of a run funnel this year because they've been just such a horrible defense against passing games in general. Of course, Jerome Ford didn't get it done last week, but in general, running backs we saw, I think it was the James Conner the prior week maybe who had a big game against them. Certainly can run on Washington a bit. And one thing I have to note is both of you have taken quarterbacks now. So now I am in the wonderful position of being able to wait until the end to decide on which quarterback I want to take on my team. So feeling good about that ability to wait on quarterback a little bit. Going back to Jake for your second pick here.
Yeah, so I was debating between 2 players for my second overall pick. It was Lamar Jackson or Darnell Mooney. I'm just going to take the second one of those guys in Darnell Mooney. Only 5,300. The usage has been absolutely awesome. Way better than his price would imply. The film is even better than the stats. You see his like 1.94 yards per out run, which is a career high for this season for Darnell Mooney. And you think like, that's sort of nearing elite territory. The film has been really, really great on Mooney. Jetpack Galileo, which is a fantastic follow on Twitter, has been tweeting nonstop about Darnell Mooney and how good he looks. He reminds me a lot of Tank Dell with the way that he's playing this year. This passing offense looks great. The matchup is obviously awesome against Carolina. It gives me a little bit of leverage maybe off of the Bijan pick from earlier. So really, really like Darnell Mooney this week.
Are you concerned at all about this Q tag? Looks like he is limited by a knee injury coming in.
He finished the game last week and looked really good. So I'm not particularly worried. It's probably just a precautionary thing because he is, a great player for them.
He's been pretty good. All right, Darnell Mooney. Now it's back to me with back-to-back picks here, and I got to think about this a second here. I have some ideas of who I want. Just debating between a few players here. Yeah. Okay. I think I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with a couple mid-tier prices at wide receiver. I'm going to go with Drake London and Jaden Reed. Reed just gets that great matchup against Arizona, has been generally very good with Jordan Love. Whenever Jordan Love is there, Jaden Reed has had some awesome games. I think he's a wide receiver 1 rest of season. And then Drake London, same matchup as Bijan, same matchup, obviously, as Darnell Mooney. Also, can't ask for a much better matchup for Drake London than Carolina. So leaning into that Atlanta matchup with Carolina a little bit with both Bijan and Drake London here. Can, not spending crazy high dollar amounts between 65 and 7,000, but kind of attacking the mid-range here so far for me. But I like the projections on all 3 of these players, and we send it back to Jake for your third pick.
Yeah, Neil, you went against your brand a little bit. You took the next 2 best values according to the fantasy points projections after Darnell Mooney. So certainly an interesting pivot from Neil. Maybe he's trying to play more optimally, copy my strategy a bit, perhaps.
Well, it's like when you're ahead, Jake, sometimes like in DFS, sometimes when you're ahead, you kind of pivot to, okay, I'm going to swap onto the optimal plays, the better projected plays. And that's kind of, I can play from a position of power right now because I'm on a 3-peat, I'm playing from so far ahead that I'm like, well, at this point, I just got to, if I can just play optimally, like play similarly to Jake, I'm just going to crush for the entire season. So, I'm playing from a position of power here.
Yeah, that's certainly an interesting way to view it. For my next pick, I'm going to go with Tony Pollard. I think running back is getting a little thin. Our 2 top values are both a little bit more speculative than they generally are on a Wednesday. Tony Pollard is our 5th best value right now, according to fantasy points per dollar of salary. The real reason that I like Tony Pollard, well, one, I mean, the matchup is pretty great. The Colts are the 4th softest schedule adjusted matchup for opposing running backs on the ground. They've allowed the 2nd most rushing yards per game. But even if we just look at Pollard's usage in the games where Tajay Spears was completely healthy, he's averaging 17.2 expected fantasy points per game over the full season. That'd be 6th best among running backs. Getting that type of usage in a great matchup at 6K feels really good.
Yeah, hard to argue with it. I've been thinking about Tony Pollard a little bit. The matchup with Indy pretty strong there. Don't hate that pick. Ryan, now you get back-to-back picks here.
Okay. Yeah, this is a few different directions I could go here. I think the first place I'm going to go is just right back to Deontay Johnson. I feel like I'm just going right back to guys every single pick here. Johnson just is not priced how he should be with the volume he's been seeing over the past few weeks. That's kind of all it is, right? Obviously, kind of the whole Panthers offense took a bit of a step back last week. Andy Dalton didn't look too great. It was a tough matchup. I'm okay giving Andy Dalton like a 1-week pass that he didn't absolutely shred the Bears. So a little bit more manageable of a matchup this week. Just give me the volume with Deontay. And then we'll stick at wide receiver. I probably need to save a little bit of salary here. We can go with Ray McLeod all the way down at 4,300. This one is really just I need a decent projection with some cheaper guys. That's kind of the rub with taking Derrick Henry, which I felt strong enough about that I have to pay down a little bit elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, this Falcons team, just the pass rate over expectation the past few weeks has been incredible. So I'm totally cool. And they all project super great. So yeah, totally cool. Just leaning into those wide receivers there.
Yep. I like it. Jake, before we go to you, let's touch on a couple of questions. Bink King asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you guys rate running back Tracy for DFS purpose this week? Have we seen what is the latest on? I thought I saw Devin Singletary was practicing, maybe. I forget what
limited. Yeah, he was limited today. I mean, it would really just come down to Singletary's availability. What's Tracy's price? Oh, he's off the main slate on DK. He would be on the main slate though because it's Sunday Night Football. Yeah. I'd have to peek at the price there. The usage was obviously great after Eric Gray fumbled. Ryan, you probably have a bit more to say about that since you helped Scott Barrett out with the Everything Report.
Yeah, so I mean, on the first drive, it was all Eric Gray, out-touched Tracy 6-2, and I was saying, oh my God, I played a bunch of chalky Tyrone Tracy, and this is not going to go well for me. But yeah, obviously Gray fumbles on the goal line. The Seahawks return it for 102 yards, and from then on, Tracy got 90% of the running back utilization. And looked pretty great while he was doing it, right? I will say, like, there were some pretty big holes being opened up for him, but he took advantage of them. So I would feel okay if Singletary were out, just kind of projecting Tracy for a 75 to 80% of the workload. That seems reasonable to me. It was what we thought, what we wanted to do last week, and we got kind of bailed out. But I don't see why they would go back to Eric Gray after what Tracy just did. So I think I'd be okay with it.
Yeah, a 14-point swing from a running back like Eric Gray is enough for any coach to basically like put him down like a horse who broke his ankle, like it's over for him.
Yeah, it was bizarre that they were using Eric Gray like in the passing game so much. I was thinking Tyrone Tracy, former receiver, like he's clearly going to be the passing down back at the very least, and it was like, oh no, they're literally just using him to run the ball and then throwing Eric Gray. It was very strange, but 5,800 matchup with the Bengals. Yeah, I think if Singletary is out, he's going to look pretty strong. I would guess he's going to be one of the better point per dollar plays on FanDuel in the event that Singletary is out.
Yeah.
Jake, back to you for your fourth pick.
Yeah, before I go here, we actually also got a question on the running back situation in Houston about Daire Ogunbowale. And I just wanted to bring this up because me and Ryan went back and forth in our DMs about this on Monday. Ogunbowale's usage was really, really great on Sunday. The only issue is that, one, he's a guy who's just always played special teams and always caught passes, and that's basically it. And, fading those profiles, especially if they are getting pumped up a bit in projections, generally works. The bigger issue to me, though, is that Dameon Pierce might come back. Dameon Pierce played ahead of Cam Akers in week 1. And, while you might not think that's a big thing, that could swing Ogunbowale snap share by 25-30%. So yeah, if he was chalk at 4,800, I would be pretty concerned. We'll have to see on Dameon Pierce, but D'Amico Ryans did say he expects Pierce to play this weekend. So probably won't be getting there with Ogunbowale, but certainly an interesting debate at the very least. Ryan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think if Pierce is in, it does kill a lot of my interest. Kind of how Ogunbowale got away with it last week was just in the receiving game. I think he averaged like 2 yards per carry on the ground or something like that. Yeah. As we've kind of discussed a lot before, the Bills are like a very big, both a slot funnel and a running back receiving funnel. Most schedule adjusted to running backs through the air. That's just kind of what they do. They sit back in too high, make sure you can't beat them deep. And yeah, you can check down to the running back all you want. I don't really see the game script going like that against New England. So yeah, I've been talked off of the early interest in the Ogunbowale play.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that I have a ton of interest there. It is an interesting call out. Do you trust Zamir White from Vegas? Not at all. I think I can answer that way. I think Alexander Madison just taking on a bigger role regardless. Like even if he's fully healthy,
the backfield has no value too for fantasy. Also, it's just such a bad backfield for fantasy.
Yeah, true.
All right, so it's my pick, right, Neil?
Yep. It is your pick.
All right. Yeah, I do need some salary savers. Mostly looking at wide receiver for those. It doesn't look like, if we assume Dameon Pierce is back, there just really aren't going to be many great sub 6K options at running back this week. So I think I'm just going to fill out running back, and then we can worry about the value later. I'm going to take Jahmyr Gibbs. So the game environment is incredible for Gibbs, right, against Dallas. It's a favorable matchup. It's not like some incredible, on paper schedule adjusted matchup or anything like that, but slightly favorable. Game environment's great. The real reason I'm excited for Gibbs is that, historically the knock on Gibbs has always been touchdown equity. He's 4th right now in red zone opportunities per game. He's averaging almost 2 more per game than he did last season. So the touchdown equity's there, the game environment's there, the matchup's slightly favorable. 7K is a bit more than we generally like to pay for a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, but in a game with a 52 total, it's easy to see both him and David Montgomery scoring 25 points, right? So, feels like a pretty great play.
Yep, hard to argue with that. All right, so it's back to me for back-to-back picks. I have 49.50 left per player. All right, this is interesting. Where do I go with 49.50 left per player? Can I afford to take the players that I want to take here? Lot up in the air here. I think I'm going to try it out with second guessing myself. All right, let me maybe I'll go to wide receiver first. There are a few players that I've been kind of thinking about. I think I'm going to go with Zay Flowers. Great matchup. We've talked about the matchup with Baltimore. Zay Flowers, I think, pretty clearly Baltimore's top pass catcher. He's only 6,500. So 6,500 for a wide receiver 1 against Washington is always somebody that I'm going to have some interest in there. And then I think... All right, so I'm down to 46.40 left per player. I think I got to go with Chuba Hubbard here. Again, just the offense so much better with Andy Dalton there. 6,300. The price is pretty good, just given his role. Not the best matchup in the world with Atlanta, but I think the role and the price for Chuba Hubbard, when I can't really spend all the way up, I think he makes sense for my team. So those will be my 2 picks. Now I'm five picks in. I have 4 picks remaining. That was the first pick of the 5th round. We'll send it back to Jake to make his 5th pick.
Yeah, really liked your Hubbard pick there. My only concern with him is that you do see the production dip a bit in trailing scripts, but he's still playing a pretty good amount, and the usage is just way too good for a guy who's 6,300. So really can't fault you too much for that one. I see Neil really buying into the I need to draft the highest projected plays narrative. But
that's right.
Let's see. So I've already got both my running backs here. I got Lamar. Definitely need to save some salary. I was thinking about Jatavion Sanders. It looks like Ian Thomas might be back from IR, and I'm really not sure how much that's going to impact Jatavion Sanders' playing time. Probably not a ton, but 10 or 20% swing at snaps could mean a lot to a guy who's only 2,600. So that might be one that I keep on the back burner a bit. Man, tight end is so gross, and it when Kate Otten is a top 3 value on a Wednesday. That is real bad. So I'll turn to wide receiver, and I'll go with Jalen Tolbert, who I think is a very interesting pick this week. A bit of correlation here with Jahmyr Gibbs from the game environment. He was the wide receiver 14 in week 5 by expected fantasy points. Dak Prescott said that he, spent the most time over the summer with Jalen Tolbert. And, he also said those players generally have their best seasons after I do that. Also, Lions defense, 3rd most receiving yards per game to opposing outside wide receivers. So 5K, Tolbert looks pretty strong here. There's going to be a bit more volatility in a guy like Tolbert than there would be with, some of these higher end players, but I just don't have the salary to get up to anybody much more exciting.
All right. Yep. Makes sense. Tolbert, he's somebody that I did not draft a ton of in best ball. I know some people are very excited about their late round Jalen Tolbert pick. By the time I was starting to think, okay, maybe he actually is going to have a role in this offense, his price moved up like at the same rate as my interest did. So he was just always going a little bit earlier than I wanted him. And I don't have a ton of Jalen Tolbert. That looks pretty silly now. I don't know. I don't know if he would have ascended this way if Brandon Cooks was still healthy. Over the summer, it seemed like they were looking elsewhere to find that wide receiver 3. Like they didn't really trust him as a wide receiver 3. There were a bunch of rumors about other players taking on that role for the Cowboys, and now that looks pretty silly. Do you guys think he's going to be a thing going forward the rest of the year? Do you think he's going to be like a wide receiver 3 overall?
I mean, he's clearly the Michael Jordan of wide receiver 3s because he hurt his hand last week, and then they called a timeout. He came in, caught the game-winning touchdown. So it doesn't get more clutch than that. But yeah, I mean, I think he's fairly locked in that role, and I feel pretty strongly about it. Ryan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, we got the summer camp narrative or whatever it was as well. Where Tolbert spent the most time with Dak over the summer. So yeah, no, I like it. Yeah,
nice pick there. Ryan, on to you for back-to-back picks. Start and finish round 5, start round 6 for us.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to running back because frankly, we're just running out of guys that I like. So I'm going to go expensive again. I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley. I think the Eagles go really run heavy this week. Part of that is because the Browns generate the highest pressure rate and the highest pressure rate over expectation in the league. And Jalen Hurts has been one of the most pressure-sensitive quarterbacks in the NFL over the past few years. He is easily like the QB1 in terms of fantasy points per dropback, unpressured, but I think he ranks like 18th when pressured. So yeah, if there's smart game planning here, this is going to be a Saquon Barkley heavy type of game. They're also like 8.5 point favorites or something like that. So that's just what I would 9.5. Okay. So yeah, that's just what I would expect out of them. And then in order to make it work, I've got to continue paying down. So we're going to do that at wide receiver. I'm going to go with Ladd McConkey. So that might seem a little bit surprising, right? Because, okay, obviously just worst possible matchup against the Broncos. They are totally shut down against the slot. But what I found with McConkey this week is against the blitz, which the Broncos do the most or second most in the league, right up there with the Buccaneers. McConkey is averaging over like 3 yards per route run against the blitz this year. That's top 5. The guys ahead of him are like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and that's like it. So I think this could be a week where Herbert just kind of locks on to McConkey. Also, the best man coverage beater among the Chargers options there too. So yeah, I like him kind of as a pay down option this week.
Has he really done much this year? I feel like I've been waiting. Like the role seems. I guess he's had a couple better than I thought. So last game 17.
So the role is amazing with Ladd McConkey. All the utilization's great. The problem is the Chargers just rank dead last in pass rate over expectation, like dead last in plays per game.
Dead last in catchable targets too, 17.5
Justin
per game.
Herbert.
That's about half as many as Seattle.
Yeah, that's disappointing. Hopefully, I mean, I would love it if Ladd can come on a little bit the rest of the way. It seems like with the role, if Justin Herbert can get going, could be in a really good spot the rest of the year. So maybe that starts this week. Jake, on to you for your 6th pick.
Yeah. So once again, looking at wide receiver, looking at tight end, I think I might just put tight end off until the very last pick because I just don't feel very strongly about any of these guys. So yeah, coming back to wide receiver here. I'm going to go with Ryan's boy. I'm going to take Dontavian Wicks. This was partially a salary constraint thing for me. With only 4,700 remaining per player, I certainly need to be careful about the remaining values that I take. But, outside of his stone hands, his butterfingers, this is a player who has excelled at every per route efficiency metric that exists, essentially. The team seems to like him. He was tied with Jaden Reed for the lead in target share. He led an air yard share last year, so the role's really strong. Even with the return of Romeo Doubs, he should still be out there for 70% of snaps or so. So I feel pretty good about it.
Can you just imagine if you could catch the ball? I mean, he gets open, he gets targeted, and then he just drops the ball every time. If he could just catch some of those, he'd be amazing.
I think the note in the everything report was that he'd be averaging 24.4 fantasy points per game if he had perfect hands, which is insane. He'd be like far and away the best wide receiver in fantasy, especially relative to his, best ball price, DFS price, whatever.
Yeah. So brutal. Hopefully he can come on a little bit. All right. So I'm down. I have 4 picks remaining, 42.25 left per pick. What can I make work here? It's kind of interesting. Like I have thoughts about what I can obviously go the Spencer Rattler route at quarterback if I want to. So I could I'm trying to think, could I fit another stud into this lineup?
No,
probably not. Probably can't fit another. Almost if I go cheap enough at defense, tight end, and quarterback, you can get a semi stud into the lineup, but I don't think I'm going to be able to fit an actual good player here. So I think I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft, 4,800. I think he's just really good. I think the role is really good. The matchup is really good. I think the skills are there for Tucker Kraft. So I'm paying up a little bit, 4,800 Tucker Kraft at tight end. Now I have a little over $4,000 left per player.
You really want to lock yourself into Rattler, huh?
I do want to lock myself into Rattler. Yeah,
man.
I mean, come on, he's min priced. That's tough to argue with the min price quarterback.
I've been going back and forth about what I mean, I certainly understand the value with Rattler. We can't forget, I believe it was 2 years ago, we had Sam Ellinger at 4K for the Colts in like a week 4, week 5 slate, something like that. I mean, he scored like 9 points, and he had a bit more rushing upside than I believe Rattler does. The most interesting thing with the Saints to me is that with Taysom Hill in, they're a top 5 offense by EPA per play. With Taysom Hill out, they're bottom 10 offense by EPA per play. I'm not sure how much that matters for Rattler. I mean, he might just be terrible even with Taysom Hill in, but it probably does add something to have Taysom Hill there. So yeah, I still don't know where I fall on him, but I can't imagine I'll be playing much in DFS tournaments.
I mean, yeah, I don't really know what to make of it, but he's min price. So I just want to since you guys have already taken your quarterbacks, I'm going to take the super cheap guy. But I haven't decided what I want to do with my flex. So I have another pick here. I don't think I can actually spend that much with the pick. Unfortunately, I think I'm locked out of any super good picks, even if I do go the Spencer Rattler route. So this is a tough one for me. I have to acknowledge. I was hoping to really pay up for a stud, but that's just not going to work out. So I'm looking for a solid value here. I think I can find somebody to make it work. Just looking through the point per dollar projections a little bit. Man, Ladd McConkey would have looked good on my team. So I do regret that Ryan took Ladd McConkey there. You know what? I could take Cortland Sutton. I think I could. Let me look at the salaries. God. I think I could take Cortland Sutton and make that work. Could I? No, I'd be really locking myself into. All right, I'm gonna just take a defense here, I think. All right.
I think that's one of the hardest parts of this show is that when I'm building a lineup by hand, I'll generally make my defense immediately after I make my stack, right? I'll put it in the lineup just to kind of see what I'm working with. But obviously, outside of playing around with it on a second monitor, you don't want to do that for the most part in cage match.
Yeah, it's also like I'm manning the screen, so I don't have a ton of time to look at this stuff in between. Yeah. So I'm kind of on the spot, all right, now it's my turn. Now I could look real quick. It can be kind of tough here. Looks like I'm just going to go with the. No, I think I got to pay down. I thought about going with the best point per dollar play, but I think I should just pay down here instead. Although I don't really love the super pay down options. Maybe I will. Maybe I will just go with the best. Oh, this is a tough one. No, yeah, I'm just going to do. I'm going to take the Saints defense. Hopefully, this does not lock me out of a better flex play later on. It probably will. Yeah, I'll go with the Saints defense there. I think they look pretty good. Tampa should throw a good amount, so opportunities there. So there you go. I'm down to 2 picks left, 4,700 left per play. Sending it back to Jake. You have 3 picks remaining. Who do you want with your next pick?
Yeah, I'm at 4,500 per player. This is a bit tricky here. I feel like I should probably knock out tight end just to kind of see what I have left for flex. The problem is tight end is pretty rough looking this week, just like every other week. Man, I just can't believe K. Dotton is a top 3 value. That's pretty brutal. I'm just gonna take another Cowboy. I'm gonna go with Jake Ferguson. I don't love taking 2 players unstacked, but I mean Ferguson and Tolbert are both great values here, and the game environment is one where we could see 8 players from this game just have awesome scores. So really not too worried about it, and still gives me plenty of flexibility for my final pick after I grab a defense.
Yep, still plenty of salary left. Ryan, back to you for your second and third to last picks. You get two picks here, and then you have 1 remaining. After that, 39.66 left per player.
Yeah, man. I'm very just trying to figure out what the salaries right now, what I can make work here. I think it's unfortunately, I think I kind of have to take K. Dotton if I'm gonna make anything I want to do work. Yeah, I'm not going to defend it or anything, but yeah, just put him in there and we can move on, I guess.
He's one of the best point per dollar tight ends on the slate. So that would be the selling point there. Now, where is he?
Yeah, the usage has been good. I believe he's 3,500. The usage has certainly been a lot better than his price. The problem is you watch football and you watch K. Dotton with the ball in his hands, and I could name 5 UFL tight ends that move better than this guy. It is bad. It is bad how he moves with the ball in his hands. But usage overall, it's fine. It's just not a pick I could sleep at night after making.
Might
close.
also be a sleeper pick for worst hands in the league is K. Dotton. I feel like that's right. If we didn't have Dontavian Wicks, that I think that would be the guy we'd be complaining about constantly. Okay, I'm gonna go defense with my second to last pick here. Partially just so I have more time to look through salaries and make stuff work. And because I know which defense I want. I'm gonna go with the Titans here. And I do have a rationale behind the Titans. So they have allowed the fewest receiving yards per game on deep throws of any team. It's like 14 yards per game or something like that. And as we know, the only way Anthony Richardson can move the ball is with the deep ball. He's attempting like a 19% deep ball rate or something insane like that. So I just kind of like how the Titans match up specifically here. If it's Flacco, kind of the same thing. So I like it either way, but I'm happy to take the Titans.
Yep, like that pick. That they were another one that I was considering going to, but they were $100 more expensive, so I went the other route. Jake, now back to you with your second to last pick.
Yeah, this is a bit tricky. You guys, Neil, you've already taken a defense, right?
We've both taken defenses, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I will wait on defense then. I know which one I want. It's just a matter of figuring out what I want to do with my flex. Amari Cooper would be the best projected play, but the problem is Deshaun Watson just can't see the field at all. I mean, like you watch the film on Deshaun Watson and he is bailing at the first sight of pressure. Like he can't force the ball downfield. It's pretty rough. Man, I do not want to put Brock Bowers in my flex. This is really tough. I'm left with a very awkward amount of salary right now. Obviously, if Joe Flacco was starting, I could take Josh Downs and just feel amazing, but we don't know that. Man. All right, I'm just going to bite the bullet and pray Deshaun Watson can piece it together. I'm going to take Amari Cooper.
All right, there you go. Amari Cooper. Are you going to have the salary?
Yeah.
What's Amari Cooper's price?
I'm good with he's 6,000, so that leaves me with 2,700 remaining. And yeah, I already know
cheaper than he's been like mid sixes, hasn't he?
I believe he started out mid sixes and has kind of been trickling down. I mean, the usage has been so good. He's, somewhere around like 17 expected fantasy points per game. He's a wide receiver one by usage. They just can't connect. At the very least, we can say the Browns are probably going to drop back 50 times in this game. And, Amari Cooper will probably have 10 to 12 targets. I just doubt any of them will be catchable. So I can't say I feel great about it, but I figure a boom game will come for Cooper eventually, probably when everyone is feeling really down about him, like I currently do. So maybe it's this week.
I don't hate the pick. Yeah, he's cheaper than I thought he was going to be. Apparently, he's been low sixes, so he was only 6,200 against Washington last week. I can't believe that didn't work out, but it did not work out. All right, so now my pick. So I could choose if I go with Spencer Rattler, I would have 5,400 left in the flex, which I don't know if I love anybody. Alec Pierce, 5,400. No Michael Pittman, but I still don't think I can get there with Alec Pierce. Cortland Sutton would be there, so that would probably be where I'd go if I go that route. The other I could consider like Mason Rudolph, which would leave me 4,600 in the flex. So that would be Michael Wilson. Josh Palmer's 4,500. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to take the mystery box. We're going with Spencer Rattler at quarterback. Spencer Rattler, Cortland Sutton, come on down. Love to see it. Didn't use a full salary cap. I don't care. Leaving $100 on the table. That's going to be my final team. Back to you, Jake, for your final pick.
Yeah, I don't believe we have Spencer Rattler in our projections yet, but for what it's worth, we had Hainer projected for, I believe, 9.7 points. I can't imagine Spencer
Rattler's way better than Hainer.
Way better. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, then incoming 28-point projection for Spencer Rattler this week. I want to fade Spencer Rattler. I think that makes a lot of sense here. So I'm going to take the Buccaneers defense at 2,600. I'm a bit worried that New Orleans could have a very efficient, rushing attack here. If Taysom Hill comes back, maybe they can just hide Rattler effectively. But I mean, this is Spencer Rattler we're talking about, the guy who was the consensus, 101 in NFL mock drafts when he was a freshman in college, and then he fell to the 5th round because he's just not that good.
Well, he's not a good college player, but he's a great NFL quarterback. I think that's what we're going to learn this weekend.
Yeah, college players who fall 4 rounds in the draft are notoriously good in their first ever start.
Yeah, he's going to be great. I'm not worried about it. Ryan, you have 5,600 left for your flex. Who are you interested in?
I do. So I'm going to go with a 3rd running back. I'm actually going to go Javonte Williams, which is also extremely disgusting. But Williams' utilization has gotten a lot better with Tyler Batty, but I actually don't know how to say it. Bidet, yeah.
Tyler,
whatever.
I thought it was Beatty. Is it not Beatty?
I always thought it was Beatty, but I was told that was wrong recently. So yeah, whatever that guy's name is, with him kind of out of the picture, out of the backfield, with it just being a 2-man split between Williams and McLaughlin, his utilization's been a lot better. The target share has come up. We kind of have known historically that the Sean Payton backfields tend to get peppered with targets. And I think we could see that again this week. The Chargers play a ton of zone. Cortland Sutton, actually, your pick, Neil, is notably horrible against zone coverage. So as kind of their only viable receiver, I just expect a lot more checkdowns to the backfield like we usually see.
Was that trash talk? Did Ryan just trash talk me?
Very bold for
I had to save it till the end.
Yeah, I mean, three-peat
till the end, Neil.
Three-peat. Yeah. I'm just gonna say three-peat speaks for itself. As a Fantasy Points account just posted in chat. Three-peat speaks for itself. Yeah, that's right. You're watching a master at work here. I'm not worried about the matchup. We just saw Rashid Shaheed last week. I mean, on Monday had a terrible matchup. Schematically and just absolutely crushed. Cortland Sutton going to do the same thing this week. I'm not worried about that. We've made it more than an hour, so we can we don't have to spend a lot of time here. But the Dobbins for Wan'Dale Robinson, I don't have a strong take. I think probably I prefer Dobbins there. Do you guys have a strong take on Dobbins versus? Probably depends on your team needs.
I would agree. It does depend a bit on team needs. I certainly prefer Dobbins rest of season. Obviously, Wan'Dale has a great floor. He'll never give you the blow-up game in redraft that doesn't matter quite as much. Dobbins was someone who I was certainly considering this week. My only concern, for the cage match, he projects really well. My only concern is the Chargers tackles, Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. They appear to be a bit more up in the air than you would hope for. Ryan, did you have a take on that?
Yeah, I honestly think people should be a little bit more bullish on Dobbins season long. Like he kind of came out the first few weeks, was the most efficient running back in the league. Alpha Gus Edwards got completely removed all of his work. So yeah, I don't know why people aren't more excited about Dobbins.
Yeah, he was actually one of the better point per dollar projections on the slate, to your point. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't get myself to draft J.K. Dobbins. But I think you're right. Probably just needs to get over that bias of he's going to get hurt at some point. In my mind, it's he's probably going to get hurt. Also, not a great matchup with Denver this week, so couldn't get there. But it might just be a little bit biased. Good to see the Pound here, who of course does the best ball overlay, which I know you guys have used some in your show. All right, let's do just a quick 30-second max recap. How do we feel about our teams? Let's start with you, Ryan. How are you feeling about this team?
Yeah, I think I like it. I probably honestly went too heavy at the running back position just in terms of salary. Kind of has made me make some compromises everywhere else. But I feel decent. I feel okay. I think as the total fish in the room, I think I held my own adequately, and it'll be really funny if I outscore Jake.
I would love it if you outscore Jake.
I can't take another third place finish. Why would you even say that, Ryan? I will say that I think Ryan did great, especially considering he's an advanced matchups disciple. He writes a fantastic advanced matchups article. Really hard to have firm advanced matchups takes before Friday. So all things considered, I think Ryan did great, but I'm also confident that my team, which is now on the screen, will outscore him. I feel really good about Lamar and my top 2 running backs. Those were certainly guys that I wanted to grab coming in here. I went pretty much all mid-range at wide receiver, but it's all guys that I feel pretty confident about, all good players in good roles. Amari Cooper would be the one I'm the most iffy on. I feel fine about, Jake Ferguson at tight end. He's our best projected value. And then, of course, I love fading Neil's quarterback, Spencer Rattler, with the Tampa Bay defense.
Yep. And of course, I feel great about my team. I mean, I'm coming into the 3-peat. I build a little bit unorthodox. He might not look pretty, but it always gets done. And this is another team that just across the board, we paid down at quarterback, not really worried about Spencer Rattler's projection, whatever. He can put up 10 fantasy points. He allows me to get to Jaden Reed, Drake London, Zay Flowers, Tucker Kraft, just a beast of a team. Bijan Robinson, Chuba Hubbard. Like, the team overall looks fantastic. And you can also see I have the Saints defense in here. Saints defense just going to be shutting down the Bucs, maybe some turnovers on the Bucs side of the field. Spencer Rattler is going to get the ball in good field position, score some easy touchdowns. So a little bit of, you always want to have your quarterback with your defense. And that's what I did here. That wonderful correlation that we're all looking for. So I feel very good about this team. Looking forward to winning on Sunday. How about the rest of the week? I know you guys do your Friday show, but what else do you guys have coming out? What's on the agenda for this week?
Yeah, so for me, I'll be helping Scott Barrett out with his weekly slate breakdown that generally comes out Saturday mornings. It's, full overview of the slate, all the plays you got to know for cash, for tournaments. I helped Scott Barrett get off Bo Melton last week, so that was my big contribution in week 5.
You could have said you helped him get on Joe Burrow. That would.
Oh yeah, that was also probably better. And I also forced him to remove Lil Jordan Humphrey from the article. I left a comment. I highlighted his blurb on Lil Jordan, and I said I would only consider him if the top 25 plays by value were banned in whatever contest you're playing. And he just deleted the blurb. So yeah, I'm doing great work over there with Mr. Scott Barrett, and then Cashing Points every Friday night at 7 p.m. That'll be me, Grant Barfield, and Mark Garcia. High-low. We walk the slate, go game by game, give all our favorite plays. Really, really awesome show. And then me and Ryan obviously followed up at 8:30 on Fridays with the Underdog Drafter Party, where we talk about the slate from a battle royale perspective. We draft teams, talk about our favorite values, scroll down options, what have you. We also tend to answer a lot of questions because there's a good amount of downtime either in between picks or in between drafts. So it's a really fun time to hang out with me and Ryan, have a beer. But Ryan, what are you up to as a full-time employee of FantasyPoints.com?
Yeah, so aside, obviously, from the Drafter Party Friday night, I have advanced matchups coming out usually Friday morning or so. Just a breakdown of all the schematic matchups, just any angle where I think we can get an edge either on the main slate or in prop betting as well. So I highly recommend giving that a read when it comes out Friday morning.
It's legitimately one of my favorite articles. I'm not just saying that because Ryan's on the show or because he's my coworker or whatever. I would just skip that part if I didn't really like it. It's awesome. It's like my favorite article to read all week.
Yeah, check that out on Friday. I will be doing Showdown article for Fantasy Points coming out tomorrow, doing a couple of Showdown shows on my channel, the Flannelverse, tomorrow as well. If you're playing DFS Showdown, check that out as well. That's all I've got coming up in the short term. And then, of course, a lot of stuff over the weekend, which we don't need to talk about now, but Outside the Box with Scott on Saturday, going to be a good time as always. So check that out. We'll be a little bit earlier this week. I guess I should say that I have a wedding on late Friday afternoon. So Scott and I going a little bit earlier with Outside the Box on Saturday. The wedding's on Saturday. So check, make sure you check in a little bit earlier on Saturday for that show. Anyway, that is going to do it. Really had fun. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. Thank you, Jake, as always. And of course, thank you all for watching. We will be back next Wednesday.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.